you've seen me go from like building the little thing to growing a family to whatever, like 5 versions of Moonshine.
I think the one thing in life, it's gonna unfold, and then when it does, that's the end. And sometimes it's an exclamation point, sometimes it's a period, and sometimes it might be a semicolon.
Yeah. Well, whatever you say. It's the 7th time you've told me to do something, I'm gonna do it. Hey listeners, Drew here from Moonshine Post, coming to you from the vibrant city of Atlanta. At Moonshine, we're all about storytelling, collaboration, bringing visions to life, whether it's for the creative agencies, the big studios, or passionate indies. So come tell your story with us.
Hey everyone, today's episode features Deborah Riley Draper, an award-winning filmmaker and writer and director of compelling features and series, who recently earned an NAACP Image Award nomination. Not only does Deborah tell pivotal stories, she also creates change through her work. She's a storyteller who bridges history, culture, and human connection. And we're honored to have her here today, especially after having just collaborated with her on her most recent documentary, RATIFIED. Excited to hear from her and share her journey and her approach to craft. Let's get started.
Welcome to the Moonshine Storytellers Podcast. We've got a really great show here today. We got the fabulous, very talented producer, director, writer, Deborah Riley Draper, who I also know as Deb. Hey, Deb.
Hey, Drew.
I'm going to start things off with a funny little story about how we met, and then dive into some questions about your craft and filmmaker career. Yeah. Thanks for coming out. This is great. Thanks for doing it virtually as well, because I know we're both busy, and I can't wait to see you again in person. I think you stopped by the shop not too long ago, right?
Just 2 weeks ago.
Okay, great, because we just wrapped on a film with you.
You did. You did, which was very exciting.
Yeah, and that was RATIFIED. So at the time of doing this podcast, RATIFIED, has it been released yet? Where are we?
We are going to be released in October of 2025. But funny thing, Drew, so RATIFIED, which you know we finished at Moonshine and did the end art card of where we were. And then, you don't know this yet, but we're changing the end of the film because President Biden signed a different memorandum on his way out. So now we've got an update at like breaking news as of last week about the Equal Rights Amendment.
Fantastic. And not in the least bit surprised in the post-production business to have to change anything last second. But hey, great to have you on. So yeah, let's talk about it. So we were just catch up here at the beginning. We've known each other for 10 years, which is kind of mind blowing. Like you've seen it all for me. You've seen me go from like building the little thing to growing a family to whatever, like 5 versions of Moonshine.
Yeah, I've seen you in 3 different buildings, before wife, before baby.
That's right. Okay, that's the journey. That's it. That's it right there. You've got it. That's the end of the show.
That's a wrap.
So I mean, we were actually at a Georgia Entertainment event. That's where you and I first met, and I'm actually going to Sundance here tomorrow with the Georgia Entertainment and their coalition and all their partners, and which I'm one of the supporting members there. And so that's they're still alive and kicking. But that was his that was Randy Davison's very humble beginnings, maybe the first or second event. So
Really?
I think that was like maybe 2015 or coming on to 2016. You know, one of those two. So I guess regardless. I was kind of a different mindset back then. I was trying to grow this business. So someone had tipped me off that you were an ads lady and working at Ogilvy. So like when I came up to meet you, or maybe I don't actually remember how I think someone put us together, but I was clearly all about the business side.
I know. You really came in hot too.
Yeah. You like threw me for a loop. I think you were like, well, yeah, I'm also I'm a filmmaker. Yeah. But yes, I also am an ads lady. So I mean, like at that time, you hadn't fully transitioned to full-time filmmaker mode, but you were still in the background. I mean, your first feature had already been released, right?
My first feature had already been released. I was in the middle of shooting my second feature, and at that moment, I was running the IHG business, Holiday Inn Express, Crown Plaza, for Ogilvy, and you came in. You're like, I need to talk to you about post-production, and I was like, and hello, hi, I'm Deborah. And yes, I know about you. I'm a filmmaker, and you're like, wait, what? And so the friendship began, Drew. And so the friendship began. You took me to
Well,
lunch, I think.
I did. I was all about trying to crack into the ads business because I didn't quite understand it. You were benevolent and kind enough to show me the ropes, and then also let me do a capability screening, and then you gave me notes. You really actually took me under the wing. You brought me over to Ogilvy, and then you said, all right, and you kind of prepped me on how to do the capabilities.
I did.
We did okay, but then you gave me notes afterwards, and I was like, okay, yes, I could definitely do better there. And then after that, it's funny because like I think we serviced maybe one gig at your remaining position there, but then we moved straight into just.
Then
I
we
think
made a
did the
movie.
next
Drew.
5 films together.
Yeah.
So that's awesome.
Yeah.
So at that point, so I maybe a little bit about talk about at that time you'd already done
I did
was it Versailles 73?
American Runway Revolution. I'd already shot that film. We shot that in New York and in Paris. That was released. It was my very first film. New York Times. The first screening was at the Marché du Film at the Cannes Film Festival. That was 2012. And just a great first experience, a great first film. You know, I still have my New York Times review right there, and that was picked up by Viacom, and it aired on Logo right after RuPaul's Drag Race. So it did festivals. And it did a short theatrical run, and the acquisitions person from Viacom saw it in a theater in Santa Monica and emailed and said, hey, we want to pick that up for, at the time, Logo Docs. And I was like, what? Absolutely. And then from there, you know, I'd always wanted to transition into filmmaking, but that experience was so powerful and such a great transition. I immediately jumped into the story of Olympic Pride American Prejudice, which is about the 18 African Americans who defied Hitler and Jim Crow in 1936. And as I was shooting that, that's when you and I met.
That's right. That was 2016.
Yeah.
So yeah, you've
2015.
I mean,
2016.
just like me, 2012. I made a movie, went to Sundance, got picked up, and I kind of like said, hey, I showed you, Mom, I could do this, you know?
Exactly.
And then quite literally became a filmmaker and then business postman after that. But I guess I didn't really realize at that moment when we first met that you were actually making Olympic Pride and American Prejudice at
I
that
wasn't
moment.
really talking about it. I was actually doing it. I wasn't really chit-chatty about I'm in the middle of making a film because I had a full-time job. So I was
Right.
growing my production company. You know, it was there, and it had already been established actually since 2010. So it was in
Gotcha.
the 5th or 6th year. But I was kind of quiet about it. And then when Olympic Pride was an official selection for the Los Angeles Film Festival, and then picked up by Comcast, I was like, well, can't be quiet about it anymore. This is film number 2, and I have distribution deal number 2, and we're off to the races. Let's go. And I became a full-time filmmaker in that moment. And it was great, Drew, because I realized that's really where my soul is. Like, if you ask me where I feel alive in the director's chair. I also feel alive when I'm at Moonshine in color correction, and I feel alive, you know, absolutely, because you bring me great food, so I love it. But no, there's something about that collaborative moment when you're talking to your DP, you have an editor, you have the post soup, you have the color person, you have sound design, and you're really, as a team, looking at this film and you're watching it transform right before your eyes, and it's becoming the thing, the art that you wanted it to become, that you had dreamed of 2 or 3 years later. Like, you're seeing it become that, and it's so special, and it's so exciting, and it's so exhilarating, and I think in that moment everyone is so hyped up, like we're all hyped, because we know we're super close to the end, and this is about to be delivered somewhere. So, you know, we know we've got it, and that makes me feel amazing. You know,
Yeah.
it taps into everything I love: writing, directing, producing, storytelling, but also like having fun and being loud. All of those things get to work in concert in that moment.
Well, I first off, thank you. I love that energy. Right back at you. I love the finish line of post, especially the post finishing stages where it's finally becoming the, like, you are seeing all the bells and whistles and the bows put on it, and it is the vision, right, that you knew you had.
Yeah.
And it's when it gets real, right, especially in the sound phase. Now,
Yes.
documentarian, starting out in documentary, but
And moving into narratives and all the good stuff.
that's right, because we even did some shorts on the side as you were just to stay limber and keep warm, right?
Yeah,
Illegal
we
Rose
did
was
Illegal
that?
Rose with Jasmine Guy, which won a ton of film festivals, and that was before Jasmine got her Emmy, but obviously after
Wow.
Jasmine in a Different World, which was her signature sitcom. But yeah, that was so much fun because one day Jasmine showed up at Moonshine to see what we were doing. And she had to do some additional voice work, but she got there early. We're all like, hey. So it was kind of fun playing with her there as well.
I do remember that day. That was
Yeah.
awesome. We all
Yeah.
just kind of stared, but
We,
in
yeah,
that no big deal, but it is a big deal kind of way.
yeah, we were very cool with ourselves, and we've done some commercial campaigns together for the Ad Council.
That's right.
Really great work that's for a purpose, and that is intentionally to impact communities and make communities better. So I'm very proud of that work too. And it's and I love doing the work for the Ad Council because I remember when I was a kid and I would see all those Ad Council spots, everything from this is your brain on drugs, crash test dummies, Smokey the Bear, like
Oh,
all
yeah.
of that wonderful Ad Council work. And to now, fast forward from being a little kid who would see it on TV to someone who's directing those campaigns, it's just rewarding, you know?
I mean, you were actually the one who educated me on why it's important to get involved with the Ad Council's body of work, and how it can actually. First off, it's for a great reason, right? To get behind it, and help promote some of the agendas. But then, I mean, you really talked me into saying, "Hey, we're going to go shoot these things. You're going to do the post on it. There's not going to be any money, but we're going to do it, and it's going to look great." And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Okay, yeah,
Yeah. That's what we
whatever
do.
you say. It's the
Yeah.
7th time you've told me to do something. I'm going to do it."
No,
So-
I think one of the things that I think is great about having great relationships between directors and founders of post houses who are also filmmakers is that you're running a business and you're going to make a profit, just like I have a production company and we want to make a profit. But there's such great fun when we do things together, and I think over these past 10 years, we've worked on things that we're proud of. We've worked on things that some profitable, some not, but all of it working with and employing people who live in our state, who live in Georgia, who live in our community, who are getting
right.
better and better every single day at what they do, and that we get to see when you guys do the credits and you see all those names roll, and we're like, yeah, that's my boy, that's my girl, like those are my people, that's my
Love it.
tribe. There's something very nice about that, and something very special about that, to be able to return to whatever building you're in, Drew, to be
Yeah.
able to,
Well, hopefully I get to stay in this one. We bought this one.
yeah, I know you bought this one, so this one I'll be able to come to for the next few years. But to be able
Yeah.
to come wherever you are and be at home and be able to do what I need to do in a space, and now I come do it in a space that you own, and I even used your space because you're such a kind
Oh, that's
gentleman,
right. Yeah.
for our Film Fatales episodic workshop. So when we
Right.
brought in all of these female directors to learn from Christine Swanson, who's a brilliant director, and so that workshop was a pro bono workshop for women in Atlanta who wanted to transition into episodic. So it was really nice to be able to call you and say, Drew, we have a chance for a director to do some coaching and some workshopping. Can we come do it there? It was great. Plus, you were just opening that new space and we got a
Yeah.
tour. So it was great.
That was one of
And plus,
my favorite things about the older space. It's just like we had that big atrium, so I just used it as 24/7 film party pad, right? So that's how I obviously got to meet you. But then any kind of film community event that we could possibly host, whether it was WIFTA or Film Fatales or any of the PGA or
We
DGA
used your
events.
space a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it was the coolest spot in town. And so when we were building out the new spot, it was like, well, I have to do that again. Like that's actually how I got to make some of my actual filmmaker friends like yourself. Yeah. And be a part of the community. So I was super thrilled to have you over, and you got to work with Brooke. That was, I think, one of her first events that she programmed. So
Exactly. And then Brooke did a ton of social media around it. And she also, Brooke came to the Bronze Lens Film Festival when Ratified was an official selection, which obviously we posted with you. And so it was fun being able to have the Coffee Bluff Pictures team, the Moonshine team, all of the folks who worked on that film at that festival together. I think that's like the first time, like, we came through like 20 people deep,
Oh, yeah.
So it was truly fun. Right now I'm working on a new doc, Drew.
Okay, well, yeah, let's dive in. So Coffee Bluff, real quick, let's get to the new doc. But Coffee Bluff, what's in a name? I can read it on your website, but I want everyone else to hear it, please.
Coffee Bluff Pictures is celebrating 15 years this year. 2010 is when we started. But Coffee Bluff, that is actually my grandmother's street. And Coffee Bluff is this enclave on the southmost side of Savannah, Georgia. And it's where the freed enslaved people from St. Catherine's and Ossabaw Island settled. And so my family has been there since 1870. That's how long they've literally been living in that same address. I'm a fifth generation Georgian, and that's how long they've been in that space. And I'm incredibly proud that they've owned land in Georgia since the 1800s. So when I was creating my company, the ethos of hard work and perseverance and resilience and brilliant storytellers in my family, let me tell you,
I believe it.
there was no other choice for me but to name it Coffee Bluff Pictures, because that's a fifth generation legacy that I'm truly proud of. And plus, but they brought with them from this, plantation experience, incredible stories, and they would share them with my mom, and then ultimately with me, and this idea of the importance of transferring knowledge, and that storytelling is really an inheritance in itself. When someone tells you a story or they share something with you, particularly in the documentary space, you're being given a gift. And that's something that's treasured. I just finished the James Brown Say It Loud docuseries earlier.
Congratulations, by the way, for your NAACP Image Award nomination for Best Director in the documentary TV space?
TV and movie space. So
there you go.
We'll see. The award show is February 22nd.
Amazing.
I'm nominated for Outstanding Director. I'm honored to be in that category with those amazing directors. But when I was making the James Brown docuseries, being able to sit down and listen to people's story and being able to have the privilege to tell someone's life story, and to have the trust of James Brown's daughters, Yama and Deanna, given to me to tell this story in the way that I want to tell it, the good, the bad, and in the most complete human way possible. That's a treasure and it's a gift. And that's what makes our jobs so incredibly important and rewarding. So that's why Coffee Bluff Pictures is the name, because it's about integrity and authenticity. It's about storytelling. It's about legacy. It's about history.
Yeah, it's one hell of an embodiment of legacy.
One hell, man.
I like hearing it from you in story format. Anybody can read it online, but hearing you say it directly is incredible. So
yeah.
Well, let's dive in. So one of the things I wanted to start off with was I know you primarily in documentarian mode, right? So we've done a lot of docs together, but we've done some scripting, we've done some other shorts and some ads work too. But but as you're saying, it's a privilege to have that gift of that story and to be able to have someone even take the time to do the age-old storytelling with you. So when you're exploring these historical narratives, and some of these are pretty big. I mean, especially American Pride and Prejudice. That's an untold story there that you cracked open, or at least shed light on, that was being ignored. How are you uncovering and approaching the humanity behind these histories?
That's
And what's drawing you to these stories?
That's a really great question. I think I have a curiosity about history. I have a curiosity about life. And I think that's why we're storytellers, because we want to know things. And when we learn things, we want to share things. So I accidentally discovered that there were 18 African Americans on the 1936 Olympic team. I thought there was only one. I thought it was just Jesse Owens, right? So there are
Right.
17 stories I'd never heard of. And I thought, wow, that's impossible. I'm incredibly well read. How do I not know this? And I was like, this is a story we have to tell, because history is moving this narrative along in a way that's not full, in a way that's not comprehensive, in a way that's not correct. And
Right.
so I wanted to ensure that these other lives that were incredible, that also won gold medals, that also were present and helped dismantle racism in their small way, and that pushed the agenda for civil rights forward globally. That's a big deal. And the fact that their stories had been ignored, I just didn't sit. It didn't sit with me. I couldn't take it. I needed to be able to expand it. And one of the greatest moments of my life was, not just the story being picked up, but the families of those 18 African Americans had never been to the White House before. In 1936, the African Americans had been snubbed and not invited as Olympians. And we were able to convince the 2016 White House to invite those families and posthumously recognize those athletes. So that was a moment where everyone was crying. The entire room, the USOC, Team USA, to know that 80 years prior, these athletes had done something remarkable,
Well,
facing the most incredibly difficult environment that they could. And they did it with grace and dignity and excellence. And 80 years later, they were recognized for it. So to have played a small role in that, and ensuring that their names were permanently inscribed and enshrined, yeah, I'll take that any day.
well, there's obviously a large theme at work here throughout your filmmaking, but even in our personal interactions. And I'm curious. So when you're dealing with these themes such as race, culture, and history, like, what responsibility is it that you feel as a filmmaker to educate versus just simply document? Because there's, even in our relationship, there's always education involved, and I'm learning at rapid speed to keep up with you, but you're also taking the time to coax me along and teach me during the process, and even throughout our collaboration.
Yeah. My mom was a public school teacher for over 42 years, so maybe
That checks out.
yeah. So maybe maybe a little bit of that rubbed off on me. But we're artists, right? Art is inherently political. Art is inherently about the transferring of an emotion or an idea or a theme or knowledge. When I make something, when you make something, we have thought about it and we've crafted it and we're sharing it. And we're sharing it because we want to inspire someone. We want to impact someone. We want to educate them. We want to spark a conversation. And so, yes, I like to pick the tough subjects. Black Wall Street,
Oh yeah.
ratify the story of 100+ years to get the Equal Rights Amendment ratified, right? So there's if it wasn't challenging, if it was easy, we probably, I wouldn't pick it. But these are seminal stories, Drew. These are foundational stories. These are critical stories with amazing heroes, right? Like you can't write fiction better than what actually really happened. These
Agreed.
characters lived and died and fought. So I love that. I'm inspired by courage, and I'm inspired by heroic efforts. That's why a lot of these characters are so heroic. But they're unknown and they manage to do such great things. And it's a reminder that you don't have to be famous and you don't have to be well known to do something that's important that will impact a generation or two who might not even know your name, but they get to benefit from your courage. So I'm grateful that I get to benefit from some folks that were far more courageous than I can ever be. So being able to tell their stories, that's the least I can do. So that's what inspires me. And then you know what? How can we not dive into what's happened in the past to understand what can happen in the future, right? That's called learning. That's called living. And that's what it's about. That's why we learn things so we can apply it.
I love it. So now a lot of your work is, I mean, you are uncovering, these untold stories, or at least shedding light on things that were left out of the limelight, right? So,
Straight up.
how are you choosing to draw? Like, how are you deciding on what to pursue? How do you find your stories? Because I know Ratified was a different process of you being attached. So, like, in the films that you started out with and are continuing to make now, what's how are you finding your figures or your stories?
Sometimes I may hear something on the radio that triggers a thought, or I may see an article, or I may hear an interview with someone. James Brown came to me through my agent. Ratified came to me through Emily
deal.
Best, the founder of Seed and Spark. So that was a story she just uncovered, and then I was interested in it, and James Brown I was 100% interested in. And the rest of them are really my taste, Drew. It's things I want to know about. It's things I don't fully know about that I want to know more about, that I think other people want to know more about. There's subjects I think that are integral to explore. I think sometimes there are things that are tick tick boom that make people uncomfortable. I don't mind diving into that a little bit, because I think sometimes we need to get into uncomfortable spaces to get comfortable. And we should always, like, the things that scare us to get into, those are the ones that transform us the most. Those are the ones that will be the test. And if we pass the test, we'll be better writers, better directors, better business people, better humans. So yeah, I learned not to be afraid. I probably was nervous and afraid the first time on Versailles, but it goes away quickly. Like, the day of the first interview for that, I was shaking. I was so nervous. But then when I walked into Stephen Burrows' office, I was like, "So, Mr. Burrows," it was like I'd been doing it my whole life. It immediately went away. So that's how I knew when I sit in that chair, it's a good place for me, because I'm confident, I'm bold, I'm assertive. I understand who I am and what I'm there to accomplish, and I'm in it. I'm all the way in it. So
As a writer director, I mean, you're picking out a lot of the, like you said, the interests and the stories that you're finding, but also director for hire. You're choosing the stories that you want to be a part of, that you want to
put
help
my
tell that
mark
story.
on.
Exactly. What's the process? How does that differ for you when you're brought in? Because you still have to steep yourself in all of it.
Yeah, you know what's interesting? Not only do I have to steep myself into it, sometimes I have to reorient the other folks who are already in it.
Right.
Because in a story that I'm being brought in to direct, there may be a vision and there may be a goal in place, and then everyone's story tells differently, right?
Sure.
So finding that space where this story can live and survive, that exists within the parameters of how I storytell and how the existing producers storytell, that in itself is a job, right? But
Yes.
that is part of the job, because filmmaking is collaborative. And you have to be able to create space to hear other opinions, but also, and you know me, you have to stand on what you think is what it's going to be, right? Like, this is where I'm going, and this is how it's going to go. And yes, I hear the feedback, and I'm going to listen, and I'm going to figure out ways to incorporate it if it feels right, and not if it doesn't. And I think people who know me know that about me too, that that I'm not afraid to say, no, I'm not doing that. That's how it's, and
Are there any issues when having to balance like your personal voice, your filmmaker voice, and then your perspective as the filmmaker when you're coming into stories that may have already been gathered, and presented, and you're having to reorient with your own questions?
I try to make sure all those voices are aligned, because if those voices aren't aligned, the storytelling is going to be off kilter. Like the wheels are going to come off, So one of my principles is really trying to get out of the way and let the
Okay.
story and the characters take me where the story needs to go. I don't need to insert myself into a story that's already a story. These people have whatever the story's about is a beginning, a middle, and an end that has already transpired. So, or is at least transpiring. So I need to become, someone who's watching, someone who's listening, someone who's looking, someone who's putting the pieces together. And I wouldn't have said yes if I didn't think that I could do it. So that's a
Of
given,
course.
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But the rest is understanding what is here, what's here, what's been shot, what's not been shot, what we need to add, and finding the story. And that requires quiet. And I told that to a producer just yesterday. They're like, "What do you need?" I was like, "Quiet is what I need." So that let the story do the talking, right? And let the pictures and let the archives, all of that will help us. That'll help the person doing the sound find the sound, right? Like on Ratified, when we were sitting in there watching it down, I was like, oh my gosh, I want to put a 70s filter on this. And the DP was like, Kodak has da 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 da. Immediately she knew what I want, and JP found, all the pieces come together. But when you are trying to make the story, that doesn't happen. But when you're watching the story and letting the story talk to you, it'll tell you what it needs. You'll see the gaps and they become apparent. And that comes from being quiet. And that's why when you're sitting in the suite at Moonshine or wherever and you're watching it down, that's why you're quiet, because it needs to talk to you. And if you're paying attention, you'll see what you can do better. You'll see what the gaps are. You'll see and feel what the right music should be in that moment, if it's music at all. But if you're talking, then you can't hear it.
Let's crack up and Ratified. Bust into it. That's a big one. We just finished that one with you.
We just finished it. Finished it.
It's a pretty heavy story. Maybe for the listeners, just kind of, not even pitch it, but just summing up the weight of it all.
Yeah, I mean, Alice Paul, right? A seminal figure in American history, put her life just on the line to fight for equal rights for women. That proposal, that amendment, she took to Washington, D.C., that all women should have the same rights as men. This was over 100 years ago. 100 years ago. And all the way from the 20s, all the way to the 70s, she was fighting to, along with other women, to get this passed, right? And so in the 70s, it was ratified by enough states for it to move along in the ratification process. And then it just needed to have 38 states fully ratify it. So that happened in 2020, and Virginia became the 38th state to ratify. Like after it goes through the House, after it goes through the Senate, then the states have to ratify any amendment. So this happened. Virginia did it, and this documentary is about this process, right? Like how it kicked off in the 70s, then it stalled, then some amazing women in Virginia were like, we can become the 38th state because we only need 38 states for this to become ratified. And they did it. They became the 38th state. And when they did it, the Archivists of the United States did not ratify it. It got hung up in a bunch of legalese, and that's ultimately where the story ends. After they followed the letter of the law, they followed the Constitution, they did everything right, and the Equal Rights Amendment is still not a part of the United States Constitution. So there's not a single place, Drew, in the United States Constitution that says there is gender equality in this country. It was written by men, and the words of the Constitution reference men, inalienable rights for men.
That is wild, and it still got hung up.
And absolutely.
So,
it was really interesting coming into that story and watching the fight unfold. Like every time we had an end of the movie, something else would happen. I was like, oh my God.
That's how it was being pitched to me when Emily came to me, and she's like, yeah, this is happening right now. And I was like, okay, I'm in.
Yeah.
But then obviously I was super thrilled when I know that you were attached to bring it on home. And but I just know that I couldn't keep up towards the end of like, okay, I don't even know how it's going, how it could end at this point. So
yeah. So once the American Bar Association said this has no legal hangups, this has been ratified. Boom. That's where that happened in August, just this past August. So that's the end of the film. Then last week,
as
former President Biden said, I am officially stating that this is, direct quote, the law of the land.
Finally. Good Lord.
Yep, except it's still not published. So, we're going to add that part to the film, Drew. So we'll be back in Moonshine for that little...
Yeah. Well, how did that challenge or shape any of your filmmaking, processes? Because, that's doing it live every day, all day. I mean, you walked into a film with one angle, and now we're that is documentary for you, right? Like it never stops. You have to call it quits at some point.
Well, I don't mind calling the shot. I'm like, yo, we're cutting bait. We found an end that works.
Right.
And that's because you're in post. You can edit for the rest of your life. So
you can gather forever. You can
there's always
reposition a question. Sure.
Yeah. But you have to understand what is the most compelling end with what you have. And what is going to leave the audience understanding the story. When the story is told, it's told. When the turkey is baked, it's baked, right? So take it out of the oven for, So and I am good at saying it's time to take the turkey out of the oven, So it's
go ahead. Sorry, Deb.
No, I was gonna say that's part of being a director. You have to make decisions. The job is about leadership. The job is about guiding. The job is about storytelling, but part of that storytelling is leadership. And that's being able to be a leader within the team, even though the team is large and a lot of different players, a lot of different producers, a lot of different thoughts are happening, even as the story is evolving. But you have to, my job is to tell the best story we can tell and to understand when it's time to end that story too, and how to end it.
Well, this was kind of random, but I've been wanting to ask you since you're dealing with a variety of stories and also director for hire, but still what you do is uncover, right, and then build and then educate.
Yeah.
I mean, Ratify is an incredible, I don't even want to call it a legacy. It is a incredible, very important piece of information that has to be bestowed on this generation now.
It's urgent.
It's very urgent. But do you have a particular process, since documentary film is it's the hardest form of storytelling, at least that I've encountered so far. And And you're right, it can just keep going, but you do have to come to some kind of story's end if you want to finish it. Do you have a particular process in your craft that how you approach these stories? And maybe it differs between director for hire versus one of your own. But like, is there like a serial killer's mind map with a bunch of red thread around the room? Like well, you know what I'm saying. So
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
I would love to get into that process.
It's kind of really concentric circles. My husband taught me that. My husband's an ATF agent, so he's worked on a ton of cases. So always kind of has a lot of these concentric circles, and I kind of operate in that way in uncovering the research. So regardless of whether I'm a director for hire, whether it's a project that I'm giving birth to from zero, blank page, I start with research, and I start with primary source materials so that I am without opinion first, and I am looking at what the primary source material says, what the newspaper of the day said, what a diary said, what a news caster said. Then I'm looking at the available archive or the available ephemera in front of me, and I'm looking and finding recurring thoughts, recurring themes, and then I build my hypothesis out of that. And then once I build that hypothesis and a timeline of the story, then I build the outline, and then from there I'm looking at what I have. Can I tell this story that I have in this outline? Am I missing pieces? Is the whole thing missing? And then I start to find what I need to build that story.
Yeah, so there is, I mean, typically, and what I'm hearing is kind of verifying. Yeah, there's always a really strong academic component to it, right? And to maintain that objective truth. So
even if it's narrative, there's an academic component to you. In 2020, I was so grateful to become a member of the Writers Guild, because I've written scripts and sold on the narrative side. But even as a narrative writer and writing scripts, my process is still steeped in research, because if my character's from Buffalo, then I'm researching what's the best restaurant in Buffalo. What are the high schools in Buffalo? What are people talking about Buffalo? What's the music scene in Buffalo? Because there's some authenticity, even though this may be an episode, but I want to understand the truth and the reality of what's actually happening. So there's always research for me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as you said, fact is stranger than fiction.
Yeah.
So, I mean, grounding in reality makes sense.
Yeah. And I was telling you, I think I didn't finish my sentence. I'm working on Ramir Bearden. Do you know who that is?
Remind me.
Sorry. He is one of the foremost artists. He really kind of brought the idea of collaging at a fine art, contemporary art level to the art scene in the 50s and 60s. And he started out as a baseball player. He was a World War II vet. He was friends with James Baldwin. He was one of the co-founders of the Studio Museum of Harlem. Like, he's this huge art figure. And
I stuck a Google, by the way, on the side here, and I recognize that hoodie. I mean, I recognize that bald man with that hat. So
exactly,
at least from school.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And from seeing his work in the Met or MoMA or the Whitney or the Pompidou or so many renowned galleries around the world. But I was very fortunate that his estate reached out to me to tell the story. And I was like, wow, okay, yeah, I'm here for that. And right now we're fundraising for it. They're a nonprofit. And our fiscal sponsor is Southern Documentary Fund. So anyone who wants to go to the Southern Documentary Fund page and contribute $5 or $10 or 5,000 million to the Ramir Bearden, A Life in Collage documentary, it'll be great. He died in 1988. And part of the story is about his prolificness, but also his connection to contemporary artists. And man, when I tell you the art is bananas, it's so good and so amazing. It's going to be beautiful, and I'm going to use some interesting techniques to kind of bring that art to life in some fun ways. So I'm excited to play with it because because I'm writing, directing, and producing, and I have the permission of the estate. I get to be free. Like I really get to make something in the exact way that I want to, which is different from my director for hire or writer for hire roles, right? I'm gonna feel like Bearden and just make stuff. Like
Well, I
so.
mean, you've always been making stuff. The collage and the documentary aspects of piecing together the story
Yeah.
is kind of one and the same. I mean,
Yeah.
you've made a career so far of that, and that's incredible. It's also it's really neat that you actually get to, you know, uncover things and celebrate art. But it's a different medium, right? This is the first time you. I mean, obviously we've got Versailles as your first documentary, your breakout
Yes.
using the fashion, but there's a highly political um, scenario going on there in that film. And this one, you're going to be diving into someone else's visual medium, and you're
Exactly.
gonna have your work cut out for you for sure.
Yeah, he also wrote songs. So in the estate in his archives, there's like his compositions, there's his poetry, there's his illustration, there's his watercolor, there's his collage, there's his charcoal. It's like 50 years of art.
Well, typically a lot of your process is building trust with a lot of the subjects, and then also the teams that may have already been in place. What's the how's that going to differ with this film? He's not around, so are you going to be working heavily with the estate? Are you going to be working with
Working
family,
heavily with the
or with the?
estate.
Okay, gotcha.
His nephew is the chairman of the foundation, of his foundation, and so working heavily. And actually, we've been uncovering things together. So that we went. He had a best friend who had this storage unit that he hadn't gone into for 40 years. So we went to New Jersey. It's like all this stuff, and we've gotten our hands on some never before heard audio tapes. It was on DATs, like all these DATs that he was talking with a friend about his process. So that's being digitized now. The 16 millimeter that we found, these illustrations that we found, just all sorts of stuff was in this storage unit. It was kind of crazy. So it was like a candy store. I was like, oh my God, look at this. So, our biggest task right now, like I said, is raising money because the most
Gotcha.
important person on this film will be the archive manager. That's gonna like the one job that's gonna be critical is the person we hire to manage the archives. That because I've never on any project I've ever worked on had access to this much never before seen or heard material ever. First time.
Oh, well, that's amazing.
It
That's
kind of
gonna be
is.
that I cannot wait to see this kind of film from Deb
Me
Draper.
too. I'm excited too. I don't know what it's gonna be, Drew, but it's gonna be great.
Well, so philosophy of endings here, winding things up. Obviously, I know your thoughts on Ratified, um, being an ongoing process, but still having a comma here at the end of the story. Um,
Semicolon.
Semicolon. There you go. Complete thought. Done. Um, so is it supposed to be? Are you down with a satisfying, or do you need open ended, or is it just vary per story? Do you have an approach towards your endings on documentary film?
It varies. I mean, every story has its own recipe. Every story has its own set of characters and plots and arcs and variables and surprises along the way. Surprise people, places, and things. So I don't think I think the one thing in life, which is what documentary filmmaking is about, you can't call it. It's gonna unfold, and just get out of the way and let it unfold. And then when it does, that's the end.
Well,
And sometimes
um,
it's an exclamation point. Sometimes it's a period. And sometimes it might be a semicolon, you know. But I think the thing is that, do you know how this week's gonna end, Drew?
Well, hopefully with me skiing down the slopes with Juniper on Saturday. But no, not necessarily. I mean, I am flying there tomorrow. That's
Yeah.
how I hope it ends.
Yeah. So you know you're gonna be in Park City, but you don't actually know what's gonna truly unfold until you get there.
No, I don't.
Exactly. Exactly. But you're gonna go with it and you're gonna roll with it. And
Well, I don't know. I don't know any day how any day is going to go with a toddler.
yeah,
I can tell you that, and
exactly.
I'm definitely going to roll with it.
Yeah, and that's kind of what you do with your documentary. It's approach it with the mind of a toddler. And you
That's how
know,
I approach everything as a toddler now.
yeah, you should.
People at Moonshine hate it.
Yeah,
I
toddler.
pick them up, I move them around. I
Yeah.
try and sneak some vegetables in their mouths.
Yeah.
There you go.
Toddlers are very clear about what they like and they don't like.
Oh yeah, and
Toddlers
there's no
are very,
bartering.
yeah. Toddlers are very clear with the limited words that they have. They use them effectively. They aren't they are curious. They will open drawers, boxes. You know, they will stick their finger into things. They want to see how things work. They want to learn about things. They want to test themselves and push themselves to the limit. Right?
I love it. Well, sometimes we end these things with some hot takes. So I got some
Oh,
hot
what's
takes.
that?
So I'll just say I'll give you, 1 or a 0 here, and you can just tell me why. So hot
Wait,
takes.
how does this work?
It's just kind of like it's like a blitz move where I'll list one A or B, and you tell me why.
Okay, I think I
Yeah,
got it.
it's super random, but you'll have fun.
Okay.
All right, hot takes. Archival footage or in real life capture or verite.
Archival footage and verite.
Okay, but you are like the archivist queen too. Like that's an unsung special power of yours.
It is.
Doc films or doc series?
Doc films.
Any doc films that we should know about right now? Besides the
Mine.
ones that you're making, clearly. No, that you're watching.
Well, I think everyone should go to the NAACP Image Awards website and watch all the nominees.
That's perfect. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Relics
Support everybody.
or
Would you say?
relics or modern art?
With relics are. I'm going with the relics.
Yeah, it's a cool word.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of Indiana Jones involved. Plus, with all your forensics background, you're getting in there. You're finding the pieces. I mean, you are rescuing a lot of these things. I
Yeah.
can see that. Emerging voices or established icons,
Emerging voices.
and occasionally established icons, as we've seen with James Brown. There
Yes.
we go.
Yes. 100%.
This is really tough. This is the toughest one for you. Directing or writing?
Oh, there's my Writers Guild membership. Directing.
Yeah, you're awesome. I've loved watching you grow your director career.
Thank
these
you,
last years.
Drew.
It's been fun. I mean, it's the whole point, right? Like, I mean, I am a filmmaker turned filmmaker supporting industry business owner.
Yes.
My favorite thing about that is I get to work with other filmmakers, and seeing that happen with you for these last decade, that's the dream, right? So, and getting to
Dude,
make
we've been doing this together for a decade. What is
that's cool.
that?
That's the dream, at least from a post guy standpoint. So,
Yeah.
well, I am so happy that you joined us today on the Storytellers Podcast. We should probably do it again, and I can't wait to see you in person again. Get a big old hug. I'm so
Yeah.
happy that you've got to see the team recently.
Oh yeah.
Team's growing, buildings
I know.
looking fancy. It's crazy.
I know. It was all fancy. You know, I had a good
really
time
is.
there too. I love the team, and you've done a really good job to build a really amazing company, and I'm very, very proud of you from, when I first saw you, and I was like, God, this guy, what is happening? And yeah, you are so more mellow now than then.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of years in between that, right? So you've seen it all. So and watched me go through it, but it's fantastic, and I can't wait to see you on your next film, and if not sooner, and I'll talk to you then.
Have fun on the slopes.
And that's a wrap on today's episode of Moonshine Storytellers Podcast. Huge thanks to Deborah Riley Draper for sharing her journey and her approach to storytelling. If you enjoyed the conversation, hit that subscribe and like, and follow us for more insider stories from the industry's best. Until next time, keep creating and telling stories that matter. See you soon.